Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me for this talk. I am Avan from IBM, and today I will be talking about the managed SMB support in Ceph. Like so far, we did see the VFSF new backend. We did see what's the connection with the CephFS. Now we will see how we could have a completely managed SMB service in the Ceph using this newly introduced SMB Manager module. So I am Avan from IBM. I have kind of 5+ years of experience with Ceph storage already. And yeah, these are some of my hobbies. I do, there are much more, but I try to keep it short. Anyways, just a quick intro for Ceph. It's basically a distributed software-defined storage. It provides all the type of storage you want, the object, block, file, a unified storage, and we are focused more on the CephFS. I know we're playing with the file systems, so CephFS is a PRO6 compliant distributed file system. And well, it doesn't natively speak SMB, so well, of course, we need a bridge, and that's where we have the Samba, and which will enable us the SMB access. So this isn't something new to have the SMB access plus the CephFS. We do have VFSF from a while, and we can just do some configurations and yeah, talking a bit about, I think, VFSM module. It's been already talked in the previous talks as well, like it enables all the things which you need for the SMB access, the ACLs, the authentications, and the locking mechanisms. So we have all the right plugs, but well, you need to set up everything manually. It's a complex setup. You need to look around the docs, go through some Reddit threads, some Stack Overflow threads to see, okay, how it works, what it works, and there is no built-in orchestration, there is no management around it. So, well, that's where the manager module says, I got you, buddy. And we introduced the Ceph Manager module, which handles managing the SMB service, whether it's deploying all the daemons required or having a tight integration with CephFS. It can talk. It supports the Active Directory authentication as well, and it exposes some commands to manage, configure, monitor the SMB. And this is kind of similar to the NFS manager module, which we already have. So it does have similar concepts, like we have NFS cluster, the logical clusters. We have SMB clusters and the share sources export for the NFS. So, well, let's go through workflow, like how the SMB service gets deployed in Ceph. So basically, Ceph ADM is an orchestration module which we have in Ceph, which handles deploying these different service packs and whatever daemons will be required underneath. So all we got to do is define a new SMB service pack, like what's the configuration required, what are the init containers, what are the sidecar containers which we need to deploy to have our SMB running successfully. So yeah, it will deploy some init containers mostly, like it will prepare, like this is a basic SMB conf, a global conf, a CTDB conf. It will have all those prepared, and then next it will be deploying all the SMB components as a sidecar containers, which Ceph ADM will take care of it. So yeah, it's just SMBD, it's require one win by D, if you have ADDC, CTDB, and the SMB metrics as well. Basically, that is response. SMB metrics does have a metrics exporter, which will collect the data from the SMB process and then will expose them as a Prometheus metrics, which can be further even shown as a Grafana dashboards in Ceph dashboard. And yeah, these are the all containers you see. We use basically the image from the Samba CC, our Samba in Kubernetes project. So we just fetch the image from them and deploy these daemons. And currently, the SMB Manager module supports two kind of the commands. So one is an imperative way. You can just simply tell the Ceph that, okay, Ceph SMB cluster create, share create with whatever arguments required, and the same goes for the removal of it. And this is quite similar to what we have for the NFS already. And there is a declarative approach, so you just basically define your YAML, like what are the resources you need, what is a join auth require, what are the clusters definitions, what are the shared definitions, you define all that in a YAML, just like in Kubernetes you will do, and just do a SMB apply and just pass that YAML in, and it will do the job. And yeah, both are compatible with each other. So like, let's say you create a cluster using the Samba cluster create, and then if you want to remove in the YAML, you can mention it as removed, and yeah, it will remove that particular share. And what are the features we have so far? So yeah, as I mentioned already, it does support AD integration, the join authentication, so they can be joined to an active directory using simply a Ceph SMB join with some required arguments, of course. And also the user and the group managements. So yeah, these are all can be defined as a resource in the declarative method in the YAML. And yeah, it also allows us to define some share access restrictions, yeah, custom DNS, and yeah, there are some global SMB configuration you can define as well, like if you may want to use in your SMB cluster, but well, that's on your own risk, I would say. It's not natively supported. And yeah, for the Samba clustering, we have CTDB support as well. And yeah, as I mentioned, for the SMB metrics, some of the Prometheus metrics have been exposed, and there has been some, I think, new per share metrics requirement coming in as well that may be further exposed. And yeah, we already have some of the UI management via Ceph dashboard. You can do the similar management of the SMB shares through the dashboard. But I think I would say it's initially, right now you do have at least, you could create a share, so that's in place. And yeah, there is one more particular feature I would like to talk about when you, let's say, want to use SMB plus NFS, a multi-protocol system, like concurrently. Well, right now we don't support, because if it tries to use this mixed protocol for the same subvolume path, well, there is a risk of data corruption, and it's not reliable, I would say. So what we don't have a multi-protocol support yet, so what we have done is basically you earmark a subvolume, a CephFS subvolume, like you can say, okay, NFS cluster will say that I want to earmark with NFS, so only I will be using this subvolume path, and if SMB share, when you create a share, and if you try to use the same subvolume path, it will be denied, saying that it's already in use by the NFS. So yeah, we did introduce this protocol-specific earmarking. We also have, I just talk about the NFS and the SMB, but we also have inside the SMB itself an intra-level scope, which will handle, like, in case if there is a different cluster, SMB cluster, logical cluster, tries to access the same subvolume path, we don't allow that. Yeah, because of many reasons. One of it, I would say, the ID mapping that could get complex. So we would like to avoid using the same subvolume for the different cluster as well. And yeah, how the commands are there, I will show in a demo later. And yeah, okay, I'm already in the demo, but let me talk first the future plans. I will show the demo at the end. So what are the future plans we have? We do have in talks with different teams, with CephFS, NFS, Ganesha, to support this multi-protocol for a given subvolume or a volume path. But yeah, we still need to look at a lot of pieces to have this support. And we have some improvements, I think, from John Mulligan already to have this enhanced Ceph SMB show command, like you could mention more refined arguments, and you can fetch a resource level detail for that command. And of course, there is the offline domain join coming in. I think there is already a PR open on at least the Samba CC, the Kubernetes project. So I think that will be the next which will be coming in Ceph as well for the Ceph SMB. And yeah, I think I can go. Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. I have a demo now, but the thing is, I can't do a live demo because, well, my Ceph cluster is broken. I couldn't just show it. So what I am just simply showing here is the same presentation, thanks to John Mulligan. He has this recording for the Ceph Alacon. So I will present the same and will walk you through how that works. So, okay, starting with enabling, the first step you got to do is, of course, enable the manager module. So, yeah, Ceph MGR module enable SMB. So, this is the initial setup you need to do before managing your shares. So, the first thing will be enabling the module. The next is, okay, you make sure you have the CephFS volumes created, subvolumes created, subvolume groups as well, if you want. So, yeah, I think those will be the next step. Well, wait for it to have it typed. So yeah, this is a subvolume group created, and next we will have a subvolume created as well. I think he's doing some couple of subvolumes, maybe 3 or 4 subvolumes to be created for the subvolume groups. I will just wait for it to finish. And yeah, it does CephFS subvolume create, and yeah, it will create with the particular group name and also the permissions. It will have 1.7 to dealing with the SMB shares. So at that permission, we may, the mode need to be set for that, for the permissions requirement. And I think once this is done, we will have all the subvolumes created. Yes, perfect. Now next what we will do is, like, if you wanna, it's not a requirement, but in case if you wanna have like tens of hosts or so, and you wanna say like, I want 3 of the hosts to be running the SMB service, so you can just label the host with any of that. So here he is adding simply the labels to that host. This is the first cluster setup where we will just look at the imperative approach. So we just added a Ceph first label to Ceph 0 node, and I think the rest will have a CS2 label where we will see in the another cluster, which will be with the declarative style with the resource YAML. So I think once we have all the labels set in, we will check with the Ceph org host ls. This is basically orchestration command which CephIdiom provides to list the host which you have on in your Ceph system, and you could see that we have the labels placed in for those hosts. And the next, I think what we will do is, okay, play around with the first cluster, do the declarative way, imperative way, sorry. So we'll just check, okay, we have a cluster created or not. It's not, so we'll go on, create a SMB cluster. That should be the first step. Okay, let's just wait for it to be created. So yeah, there is a starter. So Ceph SMB cluster created with the cluster name. The next user here you see is the what auth mode you want to use, a user or the Active Directory mode. And given here it's a user mode, then you can define the user and the password to be used to connect to that cluster. And yeah, this is all defined. I think here we are creating 2 users, test 1, test 2. So yeah, we are defining username and password for both. And yeah, the next is the placement argument. So here you can also mention like, okay, I want to create the SMB service on one host which has a label first. So you have specifically mentioned that. And this is basically a JSON which will return, which will show that, okay, this is what has been applied. So and this has been, and if you see at the end, the success true, that means that, okay, the SMB cluster has been created. And it will give you some resource details as well in this JSON. And I think next will be to create the SMB share. Okay, let's Wait for the command to, yeah, okay. So Ceph SMB share, create the cluster name, share name. The next will be basically the CephFS volume name and the subvolume name. If you want to provide that, that's optional. And here you see like demo/uv1. So in case if you are creating a subvolume for a default subvolume group, then you don't need to, you just simply mention a subvolume name. But in case if you are using a particular subvolume group, so you mention like subvolume group / the subvolume name. And yeah, the next will be the path, the volume path. Now we are using just default, the root path. And yeah, again, this will also return a JSON, the resource for the share resource, it will return, and yeah, the state is successful. So we have, I think, one share created. I think there will be one more share created as well, a share 2. I'm not sure if I could skip, it will be too much skipped, so I will not skip, let me just wait for it. Let me just zoom in, okay. Perfect. Yeah, you can also define a share name for the particular share if you want, like other than the share ID, which is by default you need to mention. You can have a particular share name attached to that. And then this is the SMB show command. By default, it shows you all the resource type, as you can see, the user group, for the shares as well, for the cluster as well. So it will show a higher level view of all the resources which have been created. And if you want a refined view, like let's say if you want to do like as it was just done, let me just go back a bit. Ceph SMB show, as let's say if I want to just check like what's the detail for this particular share or just for the shares, this will show like Ceph SMB share. So you will see all the details about the shares, and similar you can do the same for the cluster, and .cluster ID if you provide then for that particular cluster, it will give the details, and you can also mention JSON or the YAML format for it. And again, we will do Ceph org ls. We do check here in this case because the deployment, how we do is like once you have your share created, we will run internally in Ceph ADM. It will deploy actually that service. Until you create the cluster, we don't deploy the service. Once you start creating the share, we deploy the service and the rest of the init and the sidecar containers required. So we can see that one service is up, smb.starter, that has been created, and we can also check Ceph or ps command, which will list all the daemons which have been created. And we can see, okay, now I think we are in the Linux client, and we will check that we can access the shares has been created. So just the SMB client command with, of course, the authentication. We provide the username, password, and the IP address. And here given if in this case we haven't used the clustering, so it will be just the IPVS being used on which node the SMB daemon was deployed. But we will later see, like in case if you provide the clustering with the CTDB, of course, it does provide the public address arguments, right? So that you can use and access the share using that public address. But in this case, it's as simple as that. We list ls, we can see both the shares are there, and it's all working. And right now he's just putting some just a video file. He just uploaded a video file there, and we will check again if that's reflected. And it's okay. Okay, I just paused. And yeah, we again check with the SMB client on the another user, and we should see we should be able to access those shares as well. And we'll list again, and there we go. We have that uploaded file there, and that's all working. And right now he's just trying to access another share as well, which we created, the share 2. And now we will move to the second cluster, basically with the declarative style, defining the resource YAML. That will be a huge YAML where we will declare all the setup we need. So that is something cluster2.yaml. Okay, so we see, I will not go through all of this, but basically to point out right now it's using the Active Directory auth mode. Of course, the realms and the joint sources, you need to define a custom DNS. And as I mentioned, these are the public address, really useful for the failover case, and also on the Ceph end, in case if your active MGR goes down, there will be another active manager comes in, but when you are deploying those the SMB service, and once again the CTDB daemon will be deployed, then this public addresses will be useful in that case, because the user doesn't need to worry about, they will just connect to the same public address. And given we have this configuration, and yeah, this is the same way we provided the placement, the labels, and the auth info required. So yeah, to join the AD, right? So this is what we have defined. And again, for the shares, we define 2 shares here for the subvolume, like what underlying subvolume we want to create the share for. So that's all done, and I think we will just go and apply this resource YAML. Let it go. Okay, we are going through all the list. And yeah, once this is done, we will do Ceph SMB apply -i, basically the YAML, which we just created. And this will tell internally the Ceph ADM then to spin up these SMB service, and underneath the containers again, it's the same way. So that's all done. We again check the Ceph work ls, we check that service are created. Okay, we do C0 of 3, so we can give it some time to come up. And once till then, I think we can see that, okay, if that particular resource has been created or not. So if we see now with the SMB show, all the cluster resource, we do see that we now have this new cluster created, the CCAD, with the auth mode active directory. And I think now we should have up and running. Okay, it's also showing, we can also show, for cluster ID, like for that particular cluster, we could show the details, and we again checked the service is up or not. Okay, we can still wait a bit. This is all recorded, so I can't do much. I need to wait. Okay, what else is there? Okay, I think we have, sorry for that. We have all this 3 of 3 services, 3 of 3 services running on all of it. So we should have the access to share, and now I am going to show via the Windows client, and logging in the Windows client, and it has been already joined to the AD, and it has been already joined to that domain as well, which we defined in our resource YAML. So we will check in, just to go into the Windows Explorer and just type in our public address, one of our public address, which we define in our configuration. So we'll just say, okay, 168.76.50/ and there we go. There we see both the shares are there, listed, and we can just play around, maybe create a file, a txt file under one of the share, and we'll see that, okay, they are accessible on the another cluster as well. Let's check that, just to make sure that clustering is just working fine. And we created a hello world txt in one of the shares, and we will open the another file explorer, and here we will enter the IP address for the cluster 1, which we created, and we will try to see that we could access that share. And yeah, let's go. Okay, we have defined one of the public address again, and the share 1, and yeah, this will be, of course, the authentication which we defined for the cluster 1 with the user auth mode. So we entered in username, password. Okay, we do have that video file which we uploaded, and it's in there. So okay, both are working well. And I think now what we can do is maybe dive a bit like how internally this orchestration deploys all these things. So basically, it's all a list of systemd services which we deploy in the for this SMB in Ceph. So we have the, as I mentioned, the SMBD, the CTDB, and the WinBinD. All those they are defined, and those then are deployed as either a Docker or the Podman containers. So yeah, you can simply do a Podman PS or the Docker PS also to list those containers and even fetch the logs for that. But well, those can't be reliable in case if your container goes down. Yeah, this is currently just showing yeah, the systemctl status, because yeah, it's a systemd service, so you could just check the service and check its status. And next, I think we will see, okay, he's checking particularly for a sidecar container, sidecar systemd service, that, okay, what's going on with that. So yeah, you can do via this, or you can simply do, okay, there is also, okay, again the list. I'm not sure why this has been repeated, but okay, I think this has been particular for the CTDB, like, okay, for the CTDB as well, we do deploy them as a systemd services. And next, I think, yeah, again, we can check the status for that same, for the WinBinD service. Yeah, okay, so we have showed the status for both the services, like with the clustering and without the clustering. And okay, next, again, the listing with this. And yeah, okay, as I was mentioning, like also to additionally mention that CephADM by default does allow us to have this journal, yeah, journal D logs for these services. So you can just do a journal log, a journal CTL-U for the particular any of the systemd service you could have. And also CephADM supports logs to files. So in case if you don't want to use the journal CTL, you could, all you could do is enable this log to file option in the CephADM, and that will by default log all your containers. Container logs will be stored under where log ceph. That's how CephADM provides the option. Yeah, he is now doing the Podman PS. Okay, like you could have this as the containers, and you can do Podman logs as long as the container is running, of course. So, and but yeah, of course, as I mentioned, those, in case if container goes down, then you need to able to have a reliable source where you could look for the logs. And that's what CephADM provides. Either you can just simply do CephADM logs and the name of the daemon, that's one way. And another, as I mentioned, once you enable the logs to file, you could do it as well. Right now we are just executing, okay, we just enter into exec one of the containers in the, let's say, the SMBD container. We could exec into that and just check the netconf list, which will basically give you what's the SMB conf used for the share management. So yeah, this is where we see, okay, there is a cluster share one and another one named useful files. And I think, okay, the next we will see is, okay, SMB do client. Okay, so all we are doing is trying to just, in the local host itself, we are trying to just access those shares. Of course, that will work out well. And yeah, it's doing for both the shares which were created. And I think the next will be, let me just see. Okay, CephADM shell. We can go inside that and you can run, yeah, CephADM shell. It provides a Ceph CLI basically. If you want to run any Ceph commands, you could just do CephADM shell. You will enter into the Ceph CLI. Now, next, what we will see is like how exactly the SMB Manager module, like what's the communication here, there has to be something which it will give to the VFS Ceph module as well. So that's where we come into the Rados pools. So basically, the SMB module, it creates a .smb pool, a Rados pool, and that's where it will write all its configuration objects. And if you, in case if you want to debug, that is something wrong with your configuration also, you do want to check those for debugging this configuration objects. So Rados does provides to list these objects. You can do the ls pools. These are the pools, as I said, that is the .smb pool created. So you can just list all the objects under this pool, and if you do an all, you can also mention a namespace parameter in here, that, and namespace will be equal to the SMB cluster which we created. So a cluster name for it, if you provide, then you can just see for that cluster the configuration object. So here we see there is a object for the configuration, one is for the spec, and one is for the cluster metadata, which we have to deal with. And yeah, as I said, you can give even more refined. If you want to look into a particular configuration object, you could do Rados get the pool name, the namespace will be the cluster ID, and of course the configuration object name, and then you can just mention a file name and open it, and there we go. We could see the, yeah, this is basically a configuration. This gets converted later into the, I guess, the VFS backend, which we will give some information like what's the, where is the Ceph configuration residing, any ID map config, the VFS objects, and what module which you want to use. We have a Ceph or Ceph new, the user ID for it, and if in case if you want to do snapshot as well, we can do a snap ID you can provide, and the default directory which will be .snap for CephFS case. So yeah, you could provide all this stuff in the configuration, and yeah, you can just convert it into a JSON format in case if you need that. So yeah, this is basically the spec, I think, or sorry, the SMB configuration, which you will see in a JSON format. And I think, yeah, there is one more case. Okay, the deleting scenes. If you want to, in case you want to remove the cluster, then you can just do. So yeah, in order to, if you want to remove this resources, so first, of course, you want to delete the shares under the cluster, and then delete the cluster itself. We are thinking of maybe we could do a recursive remove, like just to do in the cluster command itself, just do a recursive remove that will remove whatever shares which will be there under that cluster. So, but yeah, that's, we still need to check. And yeah, here we could see what are the shares which are there. Okay, it's showing. And yeah, as I mentioned, we need to first delete the shares and then the cluster, of course. And this will delete at the end. When you just delete the cluster, it will delete the service as well underlined. So yeah, we will check again the Ceph for Keles, I guess. Okay, we deleted one cluster. Let's go delete another cluster. Anyways, it's about to finish. Okay, we have that deleted for the cluster one. And yeah, I think that's all for the manager module. But let me also show for the earmarking, the earmarking feature real quick. So in case if you want to earmark a particular subvolume, I could give you a helper. So as you can see in here, there is a earmark get, remove, and set. So you could just simply set mentioning the CephFS volume name or subvolume name, and in case you would define the group name as well. And also, yeah, you could get a particular the earmark for it. So let's say if I set already, let me check if I have the earmark set for subvolume, my CephFS, and I have a SV1 subvolume created. I'm not sure why it's showing like this. Subvolume earmark get, my bad. Okay, I do spelling mistakes. Okay, so we do have earmark already set. So Right now what we are doing simply is like once you create a share, in case if the earmark is not set for the share, then we do create a default earmarking for it, and it's in the format smb.cluster.its cluster ID, and for NFS it's simply NFS. So in case if it's already set by either of it, then of course the other one will get denied that you cannot use this share, use this subvolume for your share or export purpose. So yeah, that's a get, but you can remove again, at your own risk again, you can remove. But remove, I will say it's, in case if you want to switch to the protocol, it's, that may not be all. You can't just remove a earmark, and that may not be all, because there may be some CephFS keys which gets created, and in case if they have not been deleted, you can still have the access to that subvolume, ideally, with those keys. So this is not, I would say, in case of switching the protocol, just removing the earmark for that subvolume is not enough or not clean enough for it yet. But yeah, we may think of further solution on this. And I think that's all I have. Well, thank you.